Good morning and welcome again, friends. Um, Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about chapter 5, verses 14 and 15. And if you were with us at the last episode, you heard me say that what we're going to do is to take fewer episodes, fewer verses, one verse or two verses at a time to give it more depth.
Right.
And also not to have the sessions or episodes go on for more than 30 or 40 minutes in case you're driving or just short distances.
Driving in a Tesla?
So, yeah, that's what we were talking about last time, about the Tesla. So this verse 14 says, the Lord, Prabhu, he's called Prabhu, which is Atman, creates neither doership nor the actions nor union with the fruit of the action for the world. But nature, which is swabhava, manifests itself. So recognize that what he's saying is that the Atman, Brahman, neither causes you to be the doer of an action, nor does it determine what your action is, nor does it say, here's the fruit of your action. You're going to be successful or not going to be successful, but rather nature or swabhava, which we discussed last time, but just briefly, nature or swabhava is something that you have created for yourself over many lifetimes. Your personality, your swabhava, is as a result of your actions, your karmas, your desires, your vasanas from previous things. Now, one thing we did, so go back, if you don't mind, to episode 56 to get a more full description of this. But in brief, basically, the personality of a tiger is very ferocious.
Right.
You would not go near a tiger and start to try to pet him or tease him in any way. Whereas a sheep, a lamb, a cow, very gentle. That's the personality, innate, from within. That is the tiger's swabhava, or the swabhava of the lamb or the cow, right?
Yes.
Similarly, we human beings have these same swabhavas. Our personality is based not just, Lou and I were talking briefly about genetics. So yes, if my father were a very ferocious, angry father, there would be a certain amount of nature, genetics, certain amount of nurture. But if I had been adopted into a different family, a certain amount would come out there, certain amount would be based on nurture. But we all recognize that you could have a very gentle family that you're born in, a very gentle village that you live in, nurture, very gentle environment, and you could grow up to be a terrorist, a very angry, violent kind of person, and everybody scratches their head to say, how did this person come out in this fashion? The family was a certain way, the village was a certain way, and that is the prakriti and the hard drive and the swabhava of this person. And so the Atman is just like electricity for the Tesla or petrol in a gas-driven car. The Atman enables us to do things or not to do things, or it does not tell us what fruits of action we are going to get. So a lot of times the misunderstanding is that people say, well, God did it for me. Yeah. God made me win this lottery ticket. God enabled me to do this. Or God punished me and therefore I'm not getting it. It's not God. Atman, the cosmos, the energy around you, the electricity that makes you live, that enlivens you, does not give you the fruit of action, does not cause any of this.
Right.
Yet, each of us have a distinct nature or swabhava. A distinct nature of one is different from the distinct nature of another. Just like the animals that we were talking about, tigers, lions are ferocious, and cows are gentle. Whatever their inner swabhava is that's how they manifest.
It's funny, I just realized while you're talking about this, in Catholicism, I was raised Catholic, so it's the only religion I can speak to with any authority. The principle there is free will. They talk about God and God having control and God having a plan and all that, but all the variances that happen, they attribute to free will, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like we make our choices. We're put in a position, we're fueled so to speak, but the end result is the result of our choices, our free will.
Yes. So let's use the same analogy. Friends, go back to episode 56 for a fuller explanation of this electric car Tesla. But we were talked last time about an electric car, a Tesla. For those of you who don't know, has a huge computer system in there. It's a very powerful car. But in the Tesla, there are bigger Teslas, more powerful Teslas, and smaller Teslas, which are less powerful. The electricity that charges it is the same for every Tesla. Comes from the wall. It's, I forget whether it's 220 or 440 volt.
Yep.
You plug it in, it gets charged, the battery gets charged. Once it's charged, all the Teslas are fully charged, they start working. Now, the Tesla body and the engine is considered similar to our body, right? So each one of us is born with a certain body that may be either strong or powerful or weak based on one's previous karmas and our prakriti from before. So your body could be a very strong body, and you could move fast and you could fight like Arjuna and be a warrior, a kshatriya, or you could be riddled with disease and not be able to. So the Tesla could be a small, tiny little Tesla or a big, powerful Tesla moving very fast. The electricity that's in the Tesla doesn't determine how fast it goes.
Right.
The engine and the body determines how that happens. The computer itself is like the mind of the body of the individual. The computer of the Tesla. Not all Teslas are able to navigate. You can put a modern Tesla, a newer model. You just say, "Here's my home. I want to go to this office," and you can fall asleep behind the wheel, and the Tesla will take you there. But an earlier generation Tesla with the minor computer is not able to do that. So the mind of what is programmed in the system, our system, is again based on one's prakriti and prabhav, prakriti and swabhav. So the Atman doesn't decide it, the electricity doesn't decide it, the gas or petrol in a car doesn't decide it. Who, like what Lou was saying about the driver of the car. Now, even though it's pre-programmed, the Tesla, there's a certain amount that I, as the driver, can do. I can put my hands on the steering wheel and take it off the self-driven autopilot kind of feature and put my foot on the gas pedal, and that's where the free will comes in. Because I determine what's going to happen with that, and I bang the car into another car in front of me. So I did that. I chose to do that. I bypassed the electricity, I bypassed the programming of the car, and I chose to do this. Now, we as human beings can do the same thing. We have a certain prakriti, swabhav, and we can bypass it because our mind gets angry at your boss or something like that, and you do something really drastic. So, but Prabhu, the Lord, doesn't tell anyone to do anything, okay? So the karma that you do is on your own. Prabhu doesn't do any karma itself, for itself. Prabhu doesn't create an environment for others to do, and nor does it create the fruit of the action. Everything is according to our own swabhava, our own prakriti, and our own nature. So Prabhu is also known, by the way, as Sat, Chit, and Anand. Sat, Chit, and Anand. So Sat means existence. So right now, if I take this clock and I say, here's a clock, this clock exists. And I take a 9-volt battery and I say, this 9-volt battery exists. Both of these, the clock exists and the 9-volt battery exists. But what about existence? Existence also exists. Consciousness that makes us, whatever we are, is consciousness. So consciousness, we can say, exists, but it doesn't. Consciousness is existence. It's deeper and harder to understand, but we are consciousness, we are existence. That consciousness and existence shows itself in us as life. But consciousness, existence can exist without life. So we are right now moving. I've got life in me because I've got that consciousness. But right next to me, because it's omnipresent, is existence and consciousness without a life form attached to it.
Right.
So we'll go into that more fully at another point, but that's just
Yeah.
for the time being.
That's a deep
So
one right
Sat,
there.
Chit, and Anand. Anand is happiness, bliss. That infinite bliss of existence and consciousness is what Atman is. So sometimes people say, well, how am I going to be happy if I become self realized, if I'm not giving myself any pleasures of the senses? The happiness is inherent in and of itself in the Atman. The Atman is paripurna, means it's completely full, it doesn't want anything, and as a result, it is happy all the time. So, how does all action happen? Is what you may ask. All action happens according to its own swabhava. Swabhava vastu pravartate means that according to its own sanskaras, the swabhava, the prakriti causes the actions to happen. So the verse 15 says, the Lord, in this case it says vibhuha, the first time it was prabhuha, this time is vibhuha, which means the Atman that pervades the entire universe, accepts neither the sin nor the virtues of anyone. So if somebody who's acting commits a sin, it goes to him. The action, the result, the price that has to be paid is the individual that does the sin, doesn't go to the Atman or the Brahman. Knowledge is covered by ignorance. The people of the world are thereby deluded. That's what the verse says. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 points he's made here. One is that the Lord Vibhuha does not accept the sin or the virtues of anyone. That's borne by the person doing it. Second thing he says is knowledge is covered by ignorance. And the third thing he says, people of the world are thereby deluded or confused by this. So without Brahman, nothing can happen. We said that, right? You have to have, this Tesla doesn't move without that electricity charging it. Similarly, without Brahman, I can't do anything. It is because of Atman being in me, Brahman being in me, that everything happens, whether it's good and virtuous or bad and sinful. Mm-hmm. But the Brahman has neither sin nor virtue that applies to him. Like petrol in a car or a screen, if I have a movie screen and a movie is being shown on the screen, there could be a flood or a fire on that movie, which is being shown on that screen, but the screen neither gets wet nor burns. The movie might have lots of blood in it, people getting cut and all kinds of blood being spilled, but there's not a drop of blood on the screen. Brahman is the matrix, the material on which all of this is imposed. Mm-hmm. So we have to still get back to the thousands of examples of the rope and snake that we talked about once before,
the
Lou,
rope
that
and
you said
snake,
I can't wait for this.
Yeah.
So in that example, this is a good place to bring it in. In that example, in the darkness, Lou goes and puts a rope, and I enter that darkness. And I look at it, and there's a faint bit of light, and I say, oh, that's a snake. And Lou is right next to me, and he says, where? I said, right there, right there. Look, there's a snake there. And because of my mind and my imagination, mm-hmm. I actually even give that rope, the imaginary snake, a head and eyes. And I say, I can see its head, its eyes. It's lying right there. And Lou says, no, that's not a snake. That's a rope. I said, no, you're mistaken. Don't go near it. It's a very poisonous snake. It's a cobra. And then Lou turns to the dimmer of the light and slowly increases the light. And as the light increases, I see that the snake disappears gradually. And I only see the rope. And I say, oh, yeah, you're right. How did you know? You say, well, I put it there before when there was light. And I knew it was a rope. So to me...
That's interesting because I had the knowledge. You did not. And what the mind will do with lack of knowledge is it will fill in the blanks. And it will give you the image.
And that's the whole illusion of this world.
Right. So it's knowledge versus illusion.
A self-realized person that's walking with me says, hey, there's nothing to this world. All of this is just for naught. People misunderstand. They say, well, you mean this world doesn't exist?
Right.
It exists. It exists. But it exists as Brahma. This is the screen on which this is being projected. It exists in that respect. This is true. Yep. I mean, if I bump my head against this, it'll hurt me. But it is really Brahman Atman that is presenting as that. And as this says, if there is a screen on which this is projected, the screen is real. The screen is real. What is on that screen is not real. Brahman is real. What is being projected onto the Brahman is not real. The snake, the rope is real. What is being projected as the snake on that rope is not real. Okay, that part will come as we get further and further into this.
So knowledge disarms illusion.
Sorry?
Knowledge disarms illusion.
Knowledge gets rid of the ignorance.
Yeah.
The delusion, the illusion, the delusion, the confusion is gotten rid of with knowledge. And that's what the second part that this says. The Lord accepts neither the sin nor the virtues. Whatever is done because of me. But my knowledge is covered by ignorance. So when I'm ignorant, I see a snake in that rope. Somebody who is knowledgeable says, nah, that is a rope. I know it because I put it there. But until I see it for myself, I'm not able to be convinced of it. Okay. So let's take the example of a bright person, very bright person, knowledgeable, saintly, everything good. But he's got one problem, which is he likes to drink alcohol, right? And he drinks 1 glass, 2 glasses, 3 glasses in a party. What happens? His knowledge, his wisdom, his goodness gets covered with the alcohol.
Right.
And his knowledge gets pushed. It gets covered by the ignorance, as in verse 15. And he starts to say things that are stupid. He starts to behave in a stupid manner, do things that everybody says. What's wrong with this guy? Well, what's wrong with him is his knowledge is being covered right now at that point by the alcohol, which is making him ignorant. So similarly, we may be very wise and wisdom filled about knowing what is real about this Atman, Brahman life, but our knowledge is covered by ignorance.
Right.
Where does this knowledge, where does this ignorance, because we're born with it, we're born with ignorance, where does it reside? It resides in the intellect, in the buddhi.
Yep.
When you get knowledge, where does that knowledge go? Also in the intellect or buddhi. So what happens is you cannot have knowledge of the snake and the rope together. You either see it as the rope or you see it as the snake.
Right.
You can't see it once the light is on. You can't see it as a snake anymore because now you see it as the rope. So you can't have both. It's both in the intellect. The beauty of the mind and the intellect is this way. The mind is based on pure belief, emotions. The mind is all emotions. The mind says, if you tell me that, I trust you, I believe you, whatever you tell me, I'll accept as faith. That is blind faith. That's how a lot of religions create fanaticism.
Right.
The intellect says, prove it to me. Give me logic. Once you prove it to the intellect with logic, intellect says, now I believe, and it no longer goes back to the old way. So the average person not knowing this knowledge is fooled by falsities. Some say that God makes everything happen. The ignorant say good and evil are the doings of God. They don't realize that Brahman has absolutely no attribute. All attributes, all qualities belong only to the world. So most of the time, these are all what we experience is laws of nature. So if I jump out of a window, what's going to happen? Regardless of what I believe God is going to do, I am going to fall straight down and hurt myself.
Right.
So that is Newton's law. It's guaranteed. God can do nothing about it. Knowledge is enveloped by ignorance, and if I don't know that, I'm going to believe that God's going to save me. So the lack of knowledge, this ignorance is where I identify as a man or a woman, Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian. It's ignorance. We have faulty knowledge of ourselves, misunderstanding, so we only believe ourselves to be the body, the mind, or the intellect. And you feel you're the doer of the action and the Lord is the giver of the result. But in actuality, you are only doing what your swabhava or your prakriti made you do. God is not doing anything other than giving you the energy and enlivening you to do this.
Right.
So with that, friends, thank you very much. And I will see you next time for the next verse.